What is activism? In recent years, it has become increasingly common for young people to identify as activists, to post the moniker in their social media profiles, and to engage in conversations online regarding the causes they support. Most of this activism takes place online, on social media, thus the term social justice warriors. However, over the past year, we've all spent more time online than we ever have before, and this has led to an overlap of what used to be a primarily online identity with the real world. One of the most common of these topics is gender politics. A recent BBC article, We're Being Pressured into Sex by Some Trans Women, published on October 26, 2021 by Caroline Lowbridge, goes into detail as to how gender politics and gender activism have overlapped with an alarming trend of manipulation and social pressure. Although this article was published on the BBC and was written by someone outside of the community, many have argued that this article is biased, or transphobic, or terfy. Others, like myself, have found that this article does a very good job of representing what we've experienced. I've spoken briefly on this before in an earlier video on the cotton ceiling, but today I'd like to go into deeper detail on the use of dog whistles in perpetuating trans ideology and misogyny. What is a terf? You might have heard this term in reference to J.K. Rowling, or any number of opinionated women who are a little too vocal about what they believe in. It's an insult, a bad thing to be called, like a Nazi, or a racist, or a transphobe. But what exactly does a TERF believe in? TERF is an acronym that stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. A radical feminist does not have to be trans exclusionary, but often they are gender critical. Some of the basic beliefs of a radical feminist, and which are commonly attributed to TERFs, are as follows. Men have male privilege, regardless of personal identification, because society is built to uphold this power and balance. Women are oppressed, regardless of personal identification, because of their sex. Society is built upon the concept of females being a resource for male pleasure and reproduction. Women's liberation involves rejecting a woman's role in society as a lesser class. The beauty industry is bad and preys on women's insecurities. Women should have bodily autonomy. The disparity in healthcare between men and women should be addressed. Porn and prostitution are bad, and women should have the right to single-sex spaces. At first glance, it can be hard to see why these statements are controversial. After all, they are true. Regardless of how you identify, if you are a woman, you are subject to certain realities, like the medicine used to treat you being less effective as they were not tested on women in pre-trials, or the threat of sexual violence that we all grew up being aware of. Radical feminism often has harder stances than liberal feminism and directly opposes much of the sexual liberation movement that has become popular today. Looking at the statements that got people such as J.K. Rowling and Maya Forrester canceled reveal that the hype was far worse than reality. The words that J.K. Rowling were canceled for were, dress however you please, call yourself whatever you like, sleep with any consenting adult who'll have you, live your best life in peace and security, but force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real. This, of course, referred to the case of Maya Forrester, who was fired for having gender-critical beliefs. The gender-critical part of radical feminism is where most of the backlash originates. Gender-critical simply refers to the belief that sex is immutable and unchanging. This too would have been considered a truth only a few years prior, but now with the rise of transgender support and activism, it is a controversial statement to make. Being called a TERF, or transphobe, or racist, is often enough to receive the brunt of online bullying and harassment, and can even lead to being fired or harassed in person. It serves as an easy way to divert attention and to fearmonger. Better not look deeper into it, or else extensions like Shinigami Eyes or call-out groups will find you and send that bad attention your way. Still, many people still make the effort to talk about these topics, and despite the inherent social dangers, it is important to continue doing so. The topic called out by the article has been referred to some as the cotton ceiling, and has been rather well known by lesbians for quite some time. It's something that has remained a mostly online discussion, with many of its real-life examples being hidden and mostly ignored when brought up. The author became aware of this particular issue after she wrote an article about sex, lies, and legal consent. Several people got in touch to say that there was a huge problem for lesbians who were being pressured to accept the idea that a penis can be a female sex organ. The cotton ceiling refers to the last form of validation for trans women, to be accepted by lesbians as sexual partners. The phrasing is reminiscent of the glass ceiling, and implies that this is a barrier to be broken. This goal has been pushed for through the guise of abolishing transphobia. If you aren't transphobic and see trans women as women, then surely a woman who loves women would be okay with dating them. Often, the answer is no. And this raises problems of trans ideology. If trans women are women, then lesbians should be attracted to them. It's the highest form of validation that they are in fact women. But lesbians are not attracted to them, and they are often increasingly being pressured and coerced into accepting trans women as partners, and then shunned and even threatened for speaking out. This culture of censoring trans individuals over others in the LGBT community began in 2015, when the organization of Stonewall shifted from its original focus on issues regarding lesbian, gay, and bisexual people to then campaign for trans equality. Since then, LGBT issues have been sidelined. Although many believe that we've achieved equality with the 2015 legislation for gay marriage, in many countries around the world, being gay is still a death sentence, or at least causes them to face persecution. In those same countries, such as Iran or Thailand, one can change genders far more easily, thus allowing a gay individual to be in a relationship with someone of the same sex. In places like Canada and Britain, misgendering a trans person is a crime. In Canada, the offense is indictable and carries a maximum penalty of imprisonment not exceeding 5 years. In California and other states in the U.S., self-identification laws have allowed trans women with male genitalia into female prisons, sparking a rush of rapes and pregnancies from within. By censoring trans people over all else, not only are gay men and lesbians harmed, but women face gaslighting and abuse by people the law refused to see as men. While Stonewall is the largest LGBT organization in the UK and Europe, they offer the same rhetoric and pressure that others do to lesbian and gay men who don't want to sleep with trans people. Chief Executive Nancy Kelly likened not wanting to date trans people to not wanting to date people of color, fat people, or disabled people. She argued that it was not a case of lack of attraction, but of bigotry. She said, "Sexuality is personal and something which is unique to each of us. There is no right way to be a lesbian, and only we can know who we're attracted to. Nobody should ever be pressured into dating or pressured into dating people they aren't attracted to. But if you find that when dating you are writing off entire groups of people, like people of color, fat people, disabled people, or trans people, then it's worth considering how societal prejudices may have shaped your attractions." Quite simply, they are arguing that to not date trans people or disabled people or anyone with a potential area of oppression is bigoted. It's as if they mean that attraction is another form of activism that one should strive to be morally correct in. For those of us who are same-sex attracted, these arguments feel awfully similar to conversion therapy tactics and the rhetoric of homophobes. What we are seeing is a regression where once again young lesbians are being told, "How do you know you don't like dick if you haven't tried it?" We get told we should be looking beyond genitals and should accept that someone says they are a woman, and that's not what homosexuality is. This sort of attention has been focused on lesbians for the most part, as you don't see as many trans men interested in gay men, so they don't get the pressure as much. But you do see a lot of trans women who are interested in women, so we are disproportionately affected by it. Still, as transitioning becomes more and more common, both gay men and women have faced some kind of pressure to date trans individuals. Those who disagree, often lesbians, are in turn called terfs. In fact, a large majority of terfs are lesbian or bisexual, and yet bisexual women who do have the capacity to be attracted to both genders are not faced with nearly the same amount of pressure. It circles back to the concept of validation. If a lesbian will sleep with you, you are truly a woman, accepted by the best symbol of female attraction there is. Quite simply, sexuality is not activism. The number one issue I have with this article is the argument that choosing to sleep with someone is not a private choice but a public one. To imply otherwise is to indulge in homophobic thinking and ideology. Gay people cannot be attracted to the opposite sex, and the fact that some women don't budge on this point attacks the very model of transgenderism, which hopes to allow one sex to transition to another. This is impossible, and more so, often is openly homophobic in its attempt to convince gay people otherwise. While the article has received a lot of backlash, it has received even more support, revealing that there are plenty of people who disagree with trans ideology, even if they are unable or unwilling to be vocal about it. The deeper one digs into radical feminism and gender critical, the more you may realize that you agree, regardless of how unpopular, unwoke, and dangerous it may be. Thank you, dear viewers, for watching. This topic is one that I've been very interested in lately, as you can look at some of my previous videos and see me leaning a little bit more into a more radical feminist viewpoint. I am going to continue doing more videos in this line of thinking. It's something that I'm very passionate about, And I do hope that this video gave you some information on what the issues were with the article and why people like me support it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.